welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I'm Desiree Holmes Scherini, your host, and today I am delighted to have a guest, Laura Rubino. And let me introduce her with her bio. She's a passionate mentor and the driving force behind Higher Minds, a pioneering educational company dedicated to empowering children and their families. Laura's career began as a classroom teacher, where she taught both locally and internationally in Norway, South Korea, and Colombia. Recognizing a profound need for emotional education, she found Higher Minds in 2018, introducing yoga and mindfulness programs into schools. Beyond the classroom, Laura serves as a youth mindset mentor through her online mentorship program, a transformative 6-week journey for mentees ages 4 to 18. Her program equips young minds with simple daily practices to enhance emotional regulation, fostering a sense of calm and connection. Laura is dedicated to imparting ancient yogic wisdom to our youth in order to cultivate a more peaceful world for future generations. And you can find her at higherminds.com. We'll have that information in the details. But let's go ahead and welcome you, Laura. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I was telling you before pushing record, this is just going to be a conversation. And let's start with, you say you started as a teacher, right? And so obviously you had in your heart to help kids, right? Nobody goes into teaching for, I know that sounds like a
big
great
paycheck, right?
Right. So already you had that sense that kids need, need help, need teachers, and that was your motivation. So what happened to spur you in the direction? Like, were there any particular little stories, incidences, or was it just a pattern where you started recognizing a need for something different than simply the education part of teaching?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I would literally put my stuffed animals around the house and pick them up in a pretend school bus and have these little desks made out of shoe boxes. And that was always my passion, to work with young children. So I started my career as an elementary school teacher, actually in Fairfax County, Virginia, by you, where you went to elementary school.
Yeah. I don't think you were my teacher though. Like, not in maybe in some quantum field, right?
And then also in New Jersey, and I was teaching at the time in Atlantic City and getting my initial 200-hour yoga training. And during that time, I started to incorporate different techniques and practices with the children. And in particularly that urban environment, the children were coming in with a lot of like anger and sadness, getting into a lot of conflicts. So I started to incorporate these practices, basic yoga and mindfulness techniques, and I saw such a great impact that I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is what all children need. And then I continued my journey, studying more in India, getting my 300-hour training there. I also studied Ayurveda there for a while. And I was thinking, like, what can I do with all this knowledge? Like, I really want to share it with little kids, because every single training I'm in, I hear the same thing from adults. I wish I knew this when I was young. If I knew this when I was young, I would have suffered so much less.
Right.
So yeah, so I just started basically, like, when you kind of graduate these programs, most people go into teaching like in a yoga studio to adults, which I did at first, running around from like studio to studio. Then I thought, you know what, take already my expertise, all my experience, all the years, and serve my people. Kids are my people. I just
Cool.
love being around the children because they just absorb it. They are just, they come into the class with no judgment whatsoever. And I use a lot of like my harmonium, my bhakti yoga. So I use a lot
Yeah.
of mantras and chanting. And when I would teach adults, a lot of times, the adults kind of get in their heads like, what is this? What language is it? Are people looking at
Yeah.
me?
Right.
The
It's
kids
the
just
devil,
are
right?
they'll
It's like,
just sing and
oh,
just be so free. And it reminds me to
mhm.
look through the world in that perspective,
Yeah.
that we kind of lose when we get older.
So describe your program. So how do they find it? How do they get into it? Is it something that you bring into the schools, or is it a separate program, or how, how,
So it's two things.
how?
I
Yeah.
go into schools and I
Uh-huh.
teach mindfulness curriculum, and then I also do an after-school yoga program as well. And then outside of the school, I do youth mindset mentorships.
Okay.
So you were saying in my intro, it's a 6-week program where
Uh-huh.
I help children with basic, simple daily techniques that they can incorporate to self-regulate and to just connect to that inner calm. So I do that online. I also do that in person locally. And afterwards, I share a summary with their teachers and parents. So we all work together collaboratively. And that's when I find the greatest impact. So it's not like this isolated event once a week for an hour. Like so throughout the week, everyone is helping to reinforce these simple tools. A lot of times it only takes 1 minute, 2 minutes. I call them mindful
Yeah.
minutes,
Right.
like a breath break. And I have that on my YouTube channel that parents can do. I like lots of resources. So once like the parents and teachers are involved, then it becomes part of their daily practice. And they realize like, you know what, this is making me not like lash out on my kid,
Right.
or it's helping me
Definitely.
regulate well, because we didn't learn that. Like I did not learn that as a child at all in my schooling. So
Yeah. So what did it take? Were you already teaching and then you had your foot in the door to bring it into the schools? Because how did you manage to, convince the schools, like, can we incorporate this? Do you see what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
that that's
exactly,
that's a
exactly.
that's a step,
I'm
an important
yes,
step.
so I'm hoping I forgot how many years ago, but in the UK they did make mindfulness part of their curriculum, which is wonderful. So I'm hoping that the US shortly thereafter we do the same. So public schools is a little bit more difficult in some ways just because you have
Uh-huh.
to go through all these different
Right.
steps, and they try to keep it kind of within in the school district. So I mostly serve like private schools, Montessori schools, friends
Okay.
schools that have the same philosophy. It kind of goes hand in hand.
Right. Right. Okay, that helps me understand, because I'm like, how did she achieve this? And don't you wish, you know, that it was a public doctrine, that this was just because they've taken so much out of uh programs in schools like recess or you know or that sort of the socialization interaction part, that it seems like I from that they're drawing back on areas that really need more um,
hmm
help. And I think what you do is really important. I'd love to see that spread throughout public school systems too.
hmm
So
Yeah, that's my next step because I am a certified New Jersey teacher and have my master's in teaching. And that is my next step to kind of get into the public sector. And what I found when I was a public school teacher, that like they would adopt a new curriculum, say like health is, and they would give it to the teacher. Here's a binder. Now go teach it, instead of
right.
kind of like hiring an expert in that field. And then what happens is the teachers feel so overwhelmed because now they have to teach reading, writing, science, history, and health and mindfulness. And it becomes like
Mm-hmm.
almost too overwhelming for them. Or they, a lot of times they'll give it to like the PE or health teacher or the counselor to do. The counselor comes in the classroom and will teach these techniques, but then it's taking them out of their role as one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
counseling, which they're supposed to be. So It is hard, but I think in time that they'll see like the positive effects, because with public schools, they are driven by standardized testing results, and mindfulness has proven that time and time again. There's so many studies that the test scores go up when these children are practicing these techniques, because they're
Right.
more focused and more concentrated. They're able to calm their nerves and be able to focus on the test itself.
And that's so true. And I'm sorry, as a hypnotherapist, I know that's absolutely true. And as a matter of fact, a few of my recent clients have been people that had failed the bar and come to me to pass the bar for and had
Mhm.
success. And exactly what I use with them is some in-state mindfulness, some um, that state of learning state, like even like holding the same pen or wearing the same piece of jewelry, or focusing and being in your body, paying attention to your breath instead of letting all the anxiety come in. So it's so true. And it would seem that maybe the side door in could even be as part of teacher training, teaching teachers these skills, and it just becomes part of their life, part of
Mm-hmm.
who they are, and therefore instead of it being a piece of curriculum, it's simply a way of being in the classroom, and
Correct.
and it doesn't have to be a program. um,
Exactly. And
and
that's
that would be
another thing I
awesome.
offer. I go into schools and do professional development, and I teach
Mm-hmm.
the teachers how to incorporate these mindfulness techniques in their classroom, and I have them practice it. And
Yeah.
then I give them examples. Since I was a teacher, I know, all right, transition time. And instead of saying line up, like, all right, do this fun like
Yeah.
satanama, this different activity. And then so once they have like the ideas, and they like in use, like you said, once they embody it, then it's naturally going to just kind of seamlessly go into the classroom, where it's not like from 10 to 10:30 we're going to sit and do mindfulness. It's more just like seamlessly within. And it's so I agree 100%.
Yeah. So describe, for example, somebody, a kid in your program, just brand new. Like what would little Joey comes in and he's bouncing off the walls. So what would a day, or what would your program incorporate for him? Uh what would it be like?
Sure. So everyone comes with different reasons and different goals. So like you said, it could be like maybe some anger problems. I also do a lot with like middle school kids with like self-esteem, confidence, grief. I have one mentee right now that's going through a loss. So I do all different things, and then I make the goals and to that specific child. So if a child comes in, like you said, with like anger, the first thing and the most important thing is that they need the emotional intelligence. They need to be able to even identify what they're feeling. So we do a lot of like feeling check-ins and going over different feelings. And then I incorporate a lot of like positive affirmations. So I tend to have like a word of the week, some kind of like character education word, whether it's like humility, peace, love, confidence, that type of thing. And then we do different activities. I call them breath breaks. We always incorporate some kind of pranayama, some kind of breath control.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the age, I, tweak it. So
Yeah.
with, the younger ones, it's more fun, or it'll be an elephant with our elephant trunk. With the older students, it's a little bit different, but there's so many to choose from. And then we do some kind of like mindful movement, like somatic exercises, like moving the emotion out of the body, a lot of like empowering them to heal themselves and becoming aware of where the emotion even is in the body, and like releasing it and letting them know like emotions come, emotions go,
Yeah.
and thoughts come and thoughts go. And then when the program gets a little bit more into it, we can go dive deeper into like thought awareness. Like, what thought did I have before that emotion. So going
Right.
through the different triggers, and it's so surprising starting. I mean, I work with some kids that are 4 or 5, and their self-awareness, the things that they come out with, it gives me the chills right now because they're just so self-aware naturally at that age.
Yeah.
And once you kind of like recognize and teach them, they a lot of times are like, oh, okay, next time I get angry, when I'm feeling the anger, instead of throwing my toy,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take, I call them time ins.
Oh,
So
okay.
so we used to have, right? Well, I not used to, I'm sure there is like still timeouts, which obviously we need a consequence for
Right.
behavior, but I like this idea of taking a time in. So taking throughout the day, having a little peaceful corner where they can have a little setup of their things, like a book, maybe a stuffed animal, a timer, a breathing ball, and they can practice their tools, practice, and then they figure out, oh, I really like that one. I like this one. And then next time they're about to have that anger, they can choose. That's the goal, is that they're
Right.
able to regulate the emotion. But the first stages are more like, all right, identifying the emotion and teaching them some
Right.
tools, and eventually their self-awareness. And with the help of family and teachers, that really, really, really makes them progress.
Yeah, that's so important, is to have, like a kid can be aware, but if he's got, a parent or a teacher that is not self-aware or doesn't have their own emotional regulation tools, then it's obviously a lot harder for anyone, kid or adult. And you're that I was mentioning, we were talking about putting articles out on Brainz, which we're both contributors to, and I had just mentioned that I finally just put out a recent article, and it was just about that. It was about the topic was stoicism, but it was about the main tenet is that we can control, all we can control is ourselves. We can't control the outside world. And that message for kids, you talk about, the whole idea is like, we can, control our thoughts. If we can get control over our thoughts and understand, like you say, that self-awareness of what, like, something happened out here, I can choose how I label that, right? I can choose what I think about that. It can just be a thing, it doesn't have to be bad or good. It's just, well, this just happened, right? Now how I think about it is in how I'm going to feel about it. And then how I feel about it is how I'm going to act about it. And it's this, like you say, am I going to decide this is terrible and everybody hates me and I'm going to throw my toy? Or, or am I going to say, I'm not pleased with this. I need to take some time, you know?
Exactly. And I like how you
Yeah.
said like it's not good or bad. And that's what I really try to tell them. A lot of kids feel like anger is bad. Oh, that's a bad emotion. I
Yeah.
shouldn't feel that. And it's like, no, of course we all feel that, or that thought, like you were saying, that
Yeah.
thought, oh, that's a bad thought. So we kind of just want to observe without
Yes.
judgment and
Hmm.
like switch it to positive. Like you said, change the thought, change the story. But if no one teaches you that, I never knew that. First of all, I never knew I wasn't my thoughts and I had control over them. I thought just, there's my thoughts.
Yeah.
So something like that, it can be so liberating, even for adults, to tell them, you know what, you're not your thoughts, you're not your body, these basic things that really just like, oh, wait, I can actually become aware of the thought and change
Uh-huh.
it.
It's really powerful. It's really, and especially with children, to children can feel so powerless. Yeah, and so can adults. And it's so easy to feel like a victim of circumstances, outside forces, the teacher, the mom, the school schedule, whatever, right? And to have that sense of, I have power over how I choose to, be, how to respond. Uh, it, it's I think it's so valuable to teach that guess what?
Mhm,
You're a very powerful being. You can choose what you're thinking about this, And it's like,
mhm.
oh, oh, okay, It's
Especially with like the rates of depression and suicide among our youth and adolescents are on the rise.
so
And
sad.
before the emotion is usually a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So basic awareness. Now, like you said, they could control it. There's so many things they can't control. I remember when I worked in Atlantic City, this little boy would come in every morning just so angry and sad and upset. And I would say, I'm like, it's only in the morning. We just got to school. What are you so angry
Yeah.
about? Why are you so upset? And he would just say, Miss Rubino, I just hate my life. I live in a motel
Oh,
with my six siblings and my parents. And the key, that's not his fault. He has no control, like you're saying,
yeah.
over his environment, over his circumstances, but he does have control over how he thinks about it and how he feels, and he can change that anger, and that's like
To a
what I was
degree, yeah.
trying to get across.
And the outside forces are always going to be there. Yeah. So for some people like him, it's going to be a continual, building that resilience. So tell me about, like, resilience, I think is a like a cool keyword for kids to develop. So, what do you think of that? How would you say is the best way to build resilience from a young age for kids so that they can withstand, the outside forces?
I guess in just encouraging them to try new things and make mistakes, and it's okay. And that's how we learn, is from those mistakes. We didn't make the mistake. How would you, how would you know? And just getting out there instead of being so sheltered. I think like this day and age, like a lot of times parents are just afraid of like sending their kids out to do this or that, or they're behind screens so much. And
Oh
that's
yeah,
really not helping building that resilience. It's just really life experience. That's what builds it, and how you think about it. Is it going to knock you down or bring you up?
yeah. What's your next step? Right now you've got the program. You say it's online, um, and in
Yeah,
person.
and in
So
person, yeah.
so how do you got something else coming, or are you
I'm
building
always
more?
evolving and changing. Like I never thought when I was teaching in the classroom and that I would teach like even abroad in different countries. And I
Yeah,
never thought
exciting.
now that I'd be teaching yoga and mindfulness. And then it developed into these one-on-one, which I'm really enjoying the mentorship program. I
Mhm.
love teaching whole groups, but when you're able to do one-on-one, you can really see progression and like really get down to the nitty gritty with them, you know?
Yeah,
So I'm hoping to do more of that. And I'm also hoping to get into more schools and do like the more we were saying before, like professional development trainings, because I
yeah.
think that will reach my goal in my company is really just to reach as many kids as possible. So if I can train more teachers, then they can give that to the children because I'm only one person.
So is that something you're thinking that within your company to train people to do what you're doing already, or do you already have that going on?
Exactly. Well, currently I do professional developments in schools. So I do train teachers on how to incorporate mindfulness into their classrooms. I
Uh-huh.
have not like trained with my particular curriculum, if that
Okay,
makes sense.
sure.
But that
Yeah,
would be something down the road for sure.
and have a trademark. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, to figure all that stuff out. But I have all the lessons and everything written out for both the mindfulness program and the after school yoga program. So it's definitely feasible. It's just, we'll see where things take me. I'm very like open to, I love
Yeah.
like just I almost love not knowing, but still having like a goal and still working every day and teaching every day and kind of see where it goes from there. But I definitely see growth, and I want to reach as many children, like I said, as possible, really.
But I think that's awesome. And I love what you do. And I think it's so important to try to start with kids, to especially that emotional intelligence, because we see what the world's like, right?
Mhm.
you know, like, people, just can't handle it sometimes. I live in DC, and I'll have my window open and I'll just hear somebody screaming, having like whatever, they're having some horrible fight out in the middle of the street. And it's like, yeah, somebody needed to learn how to regulate somewhere along the way. And
Mhm.
like you say, if everyone could just learn it when they're young, like, how to get along with themselves, right?
Mhm.
And then they could get along with everybody else a little better. Um,
Exactly.
it
And
would
then
be,
we'll just keep ripple effect. And then
mhm,
when they have children, they'll raise them that way because like you were saying, like it's really difficult when you're in a household where mom and dad are always fighting or
mhm,
dad can't control his anger. So that's all they see. Children are just going to do what they see. I mean, it's pretty
yeah,
simple.
and
So
that's it. Yeah,
breaking that cycle. And I'm not even blaming it on the parents. A lot of times that's how we grow up. We didn't know any
right,
better. We
yeah,
weren't taught this. It's not like it's their fault, but trying to kind of like break that cycle. And I think that's the
absolutely.
key with
Yeah.
children, with the younger generations.
And up until like around the age of 7, they are just sponges. Again, speaking hypnotically, their brain waves are actually in a state of hypnosis. You wouldn't know it, but yeah, something interesting for you to know is that children's brain waves up until about 6 to 9, somewhere in there, but around 7, their their brain waves are actually in such an open state that they're highly suggestible. And I think it might have been nature's way of, adapting them, assimilating them so that they pick up and learn how to survive and, eat the right flour or whatever, right?
In
But
language.
yeah, but it also means that they absorb what their parents, or, they absorb the role modeling. So what kids grow up with is how they carry forward their expectation of this is what marriage is like, or this is what moms are like, or this is what dads are like. Hence, often why traumatic stuff gets carried over into adulthood, and an adult wouldn't understand why they have certain responses, or lack of emotional intelligence, because they didn't learn it. They didn't have that. And so what you're doing can provide, like you say, breaking that cycle. What you're doing, reaching children in that, age group or as young people, to kind of counteract any negative role modeling and absorb, stuff that they absorbed as quote unquote the truth, as a belief, and this is how life is really, really important. I really hope that you can reach every child in the world
Yeah.
with what you're doing.
But exactly, like you said, like role models. And now we
Mhm.
live in like a society that's so isolated. And a lot of these children don't have positive role models. And that's why
Mhm.
I like the word mentor for myself, because a lot of these, especially I work with like middle school girls a lot, and
Yeah,
they don't want to talk to their moms about
yeah, I
certain.
know.
So
Mom, God.
I get it. I didn't either, but but we're lacking that community. That was one of my brains article, is like the village mindset. Like we need to get back to that village mindset where everybody, like I consider myself a parent to every child that I work with, or
Mhm.
any child, like, and they need those positive role models, because otherwise they're going to go on their phone or social media to look up the answer, or ask a friend. I'm not
Gosh,
saying that necessarily, like sometimes it could be, and it's a little bit, so it's
yeah,
like so important that these children have somebody that they can look up to for a positive role model, or for advice, or as an example, because maybe their parents don't have a healthy marriage like you were just saying, but maybe if they had another adult in their life that they looked up to that had a positive marriage, and they would understand relationships a bit better. So getting away from isolation to more of a community.
yeah, more options, more people to demonstrate like healthy, healthy, happy thoughts and emotions. So that's awesome. Okay, so how can people reach you? How can people, if they're interested in your program online, or do you work virtually, you said, as well?
Mhm.
So
Yes,
how
yeah.
how would people reach you for that if they're interested?
Sure. My website is thehigherminds.com. My Instagram is at Higher Minds Yoga, and they can reach me through there. There's a contact button. You can email or send me a message. I'll be more than happy to set up a free 20-minute discovery call to see if we'd be a good fit.
Cool. That's awesome. So, do you have anything else you want to add? Any last like tidbits of, yogic wisdom to the audience or?
I'm still thinking about how you said like the children at the young age. I guess they're in like a theta. Is that the correct?
They're sort of in alpha, theta. The younger they are, they're in delta. Then they, believe it or not, they're walking
Okay.
around like little zombies, even though they
Right.
don't seem to be. And then they're in theta, alpha, and then they, kind of bloom
Yeah.
around 9 years old into being fully assimilated. you
That's
know,
beautiful. I was
yeah,
just thinking all the things that are in our consciousness and our mind from we were a kid, from these
yeah.
stupid jingle commercials that just like
Oh yeah.
replay, and how like bringing them chanting in these mantras that are like
Hmm.
elevating. That's why my company is called Higher Minds, like to elevate their consciousness and to feed their minds with these higher vibrations. And especially at that age, that's so powerful because they're just so open to receive it. And
Yeah,
I just hope that these mantras will go through their whole lives and they'll be able to go back to them, and because it's going to stick if
that's
they're in
right.
that state. So I think just becoming more aware of what media we're consuming and what media our children are consuming, because it might look like, oh, an innocent like jingle or commercial. Like even some of the nursery songs I hear at the
Oh,
school, it's just kind of like, well, what is that really teaching them?
right.
That's in their brain and their consciousness forever, like Mary Had a Little Lamb, or
Yeah,
we could be teaching them beautiful, beautiful mantras and just ways to uplift them and affirmations that they could be memorizing instead of like a silly jingle, you know?
right. And the sounds, the sound vibrations are actually powerful too. So that's a whole different conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
to have that the power of the sound uh, actually, enhancing their vibratory state is so important too. So I really admire what you're doing. So anyway, I just want to say I think we're kind of out of time with the wrap it up, but thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end this, but don't go away. So I'll stop the recording, but don't go away.
Thank
Okay.
you.